Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, and thank you all for coming. It's kind of like for me, a little bit like old home week. I get to see all these people that I've seen one-off, but collectively it feels very much like home. So thank you all for taking time from your very, very busy schedules to be here. I know all of you in this room wear 35 different hats as fundraisers and as executives and as the people who are doing the great things in the community. You've got more than you can say grace over. So I thank you for being here, and we're all very, very excited to share with you what's happening with our foundation and how we hope to come alongside you all to do the good work that you are committed to doing in Arlington. So what we'd like to do this morning or this afternoon is start a little bit with just some inspiration. So if you'll just sit tight, and we've got a little show for you, and then after that you'll hear from members of our board.
Too often we don't say thank you, so I hope you don't think we just waited till we got 5 years under our belt and now we're going to come and say hi. We know most of you. We've worked closely with you. We're proud to call you our friend, and I hope you're inspired by the words that were put forward to you in this setting. I'm Lana Wolf. I'm a city council member, and it is indeed an honor that I serve as the vice president of the Arlington Tomorrow Fund. On behalf of Tom Cravens, the current president, he's unable to be here, so I get to say welcome to each and every one of you. I also want to recognize and ask to come up Michael Glaspie, who is a member, city council member, and serves as the secretary of the Arlington Tomorrow Fund. Jimmy Bennett, city council member. We're the 3 council members who were appointed by the mayor to serve on the 5-member board. But let me tell you how important Jimmy Bennett is. He's the treasurer. Okay. He still only gets 1 vote like everybody else. But anyway, I truly hope you paid attention to the last segment that talks about we want to contribute to make Arlington a thriving community. We often talk about a vibrant community, but it will thrive when the hearts of our people care for each other and as we carry on the task of what we want to do. As a result, in the culmination of our 5 years as an organization, we've matured, and there will be changes that Carolyn Mitesina, who has been our executive director from day one, is going to walk you through. If you haven't had the opportunity to go to our new website, please do. You will find it quite refreshing. I hope that you will see that there will be a clearer instruction on how to apply. The process, I believe, has been refined, and that's our goal, is to get this investment back into the community, into your organization, your neighborhood, and we believe that you all have a calling to do what you're here for, and we want to be a part of it. I want to recognize Trey Yelverton, our city manager. Trey is just a true believer in this community and what it's all about. He serves with his heart, and his family also serves in that capacity, and he sits with us on that board. Michael Glaspie, that's all I'm going to say, so you say something. Jim, you say something, then we're going to hand it over to Carolyn so that you all can hear all the good stuff that's coming about. Mm-hmm.
Also want to recognize April Dixon, who handles our money here in the city. We're so thankful to have her with us. Lana has both eloquently and sufficiently welcomed everyone and explained why we're here, and I'm so thankful that you are here, and also thankful for the privilege and opportunity you've given me to serve on this board. Please, whatever we can do to make a difference, that's our desire. But as you know, everybody has an expansive list of things that can be done, but we want to do all we can to address as much as we can for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Glad to see so many friendly faces and friends here. I don't think it's a coincidence, but from the first meeting Lana and I participated on the Tomorrow Foundation board, things began to change, and we began to change things significantly. And she used the word earlier, mature, and I think that is something that we've all recognized. This foundation is at that stage in its life where it is maturing. You know, some of the slides we saw earlier talked about trees and seeds and all that. This foundation, I think, is doing that very same thing. We I think, look at things perhaps a little differently now. We recognize that in this room, a lot of us have a lot of different interests and concerns about how we want to make this community be a better place to live, and I'm sure we're going to do that. But you know, a lot of us kind of have that same vision. And one of the things we recognize is, you know what, maybe one of the things we ought to do is get more of those people together who kind of think the same way, and let's work together on some things. That'll be one of the changes that we're going to be talking about and encouraging is some cooperation amongst some of our groups that are really focused on, say, a particular kind of issue, and target that and really have a meaningful impact that goes beyond this year. We're looking for those things that people can see into the future, and we're looking for you to help us find out a way to make that happen. So we hope you like the direction we're moving now. If not, I'm sure we'll hear about it. But nevertheless, thanks again for being here. We're excited about where we're at and what the future looks like, and I hope after you've had a chance to listen to all the things we've got to say today, you'll be as excited as we are. So thank you very much.
Okay, as I said earlier, so many of you are familiar to me, so many of you I've worked with, but just to make sure everybody kind of knows who we're talking to, those of you that represent an organization that has actually received a grant from the Arlington Tomorrow Foundation, could you raise your hands? All right. So those of you that are in this room that raised your hand know a little bit about the way we have operated in our first 5 years. Some of you who didn't raise your hands may be hearing it for the first time. Either way, we're going to kind of start out on the same kind of platform, if you will. And so those of you that know as much about the foundation as I do, just bear with me. There's a couple over there that know a lot about it. But what we want to do is kind of take you from the beginning all the way to the end, and then we will hope to have time afterwards for questions so that everyone can kind of benefit from each other learning along the way. Okay, so with that, I think we'll just go ahead and get started with our presentation. So Lana, Jimmy, and Michael talked a little bit about their roles. This is a foundation that has a very, very unique structure. It started first with the vision of public servants who said that they recognized that there was going to be a financial windfall from the natural gas drilling activities that were happening on city-owned property. And that was something that they felt like should be here to work for the city for the long haul. It's really easy to incorporate those kinds of financial resources into the day-to-day operations, but what do we do to make sure that that sort of resource, asset, if you will, to the city is here for the long haul to help not only all of us who live here today, but my children, who I expect to be Arlington residents well into their prime and beyond that. So that's very much what the vision of the foundation was and is today. And our mission, as Lana talked, is to contribute to a thriving community. Those of you who follow the city will know that that's part of the city's mantra as well. And it's very deliberate that our mission aligns with that of the city's. We are here to serve the city as their charitable arm and to partner with the city on activities that make this a better place for all of us to call home. So as an overview, very quickly, starting from the beginning, in 2007, the foundation was created by the Arlington City Council. It is a quasi-governmental organization, so it's not like all the charitable foundations that you all may know or that you may write grants to. We do have a mission to also relieve the burden of government, and we are tied to the city. And the city council represents members, 3 votes on our board for very deliberate reasons. It's funded from the gas drilling revenues on city-owned property. And that revenue is 90% of the gas bonus, lease bonus money, and 50% of the long-term royalties. In 5 years, the corpus has grown from the original gift of $26 million by the city to $80 million in assets. It's a segregated permanent endowment, and the reason I think that's important for you all to know is that the corpus, or that almost $80 million in assets, is permanently endowed, and it's intended to generate revenues. Those revenues are what we use to distribute in grants to your good work. So it's very, very important that this board is not only dedicated to looking at the distribution side of the equation, that is making sure that it gets in the community and that it's doing the work that you all are doing and benefiting the community, but also on the investment side. So about 50 to 60% of their time is looking at the investment activities of the endowment to make sure that we have the ability to make grants in the community. So we provide grants to tax-exempt organizations and city departments, again, hence that connection to the governmental entity, and only to organizations that are serving Arlington residents. So there may be from time to time an organization that doesn't have an office directly located in Arlington, but we will support their activities if they're for the benefit exclusively of Arlington residents. Any organization that is operating without a 501c3 or a charitable tax-exempt status can partner with a city department or with another nonprofit and be eligible for grant consideration. So in the 5 years that the foundation's been operating, here's just kind of a snapshot on what we've done by the numbers. So first of all, the average annual giving has been about $1.1 million. The average grant size has been just under $30,000. The total grants to local charities has been $4.2 million, and to city departments there's been $3.1 million contributed. And in fiscal year 13, starting on October 1st, we expect to have $1.5 million available in our grant pool. This is a little bit of an eye chart, but I hope everybody picked up the flyer at the front door. This is a bar chart to give you a visual of the history of the foundation. So since 2007, $7.3 million has been contributed in the city, and 252 projects or programs have actually been funded. Those 10 categories actually are the 10 categories that the foundation was created to support. Each one of those have individual goals, and we'll get to that in a minute when we talk about giving guidelines. So those numbers are in thousands, and you can kind of see where things have been spent. So in our operations, again, following up on what our board members said, we have a 5-member board selected by the mayor, appointed by the mayor, and approved by the city council. We have 3 members that are sitting city council, 2 that are citizens. We have a 5-member board. At all times, we must have a quorum in order to do our business. And the board members are listed here. The one member that wasn't mentioned in the introduction is Jim Spagnola from the University of Texas at Arlington. So how we work. Some of this is new to those of you that know us, and I will have a slide at the end kind of wrapping all this up, but we have an open year-round application process, and that is different from what we had formerly where you had 2 cycles, a fall cycle and a spring cycle. Again, the board's goal here is to make sure that we are as available to you as possible. We don't want you trying to force fit into our process. We want to be flexible and available to you on an ongoing basis. There is, though, a 2-step process, and we follow that to the letter. The first process is a letter of inquiry. We accept those through our online application process, which I will demonstrate to you in a minute. Once the board has reviewed those and looked at those in the totality, then they will make a decision on whether or not they're going to invite a final application. If that's the case, I communicate to you and give you instructions on how to submit a final application. The entire process from letter of inquiry all the way to the award deliberations will take about 4 to 5 months. I want to make sure you all know that and plan accordingly. It is a lengthy process. I will do some due diligence. If you get to the final application phase, I'll come out, I'll meet with you, I'll talk to you, I'll look at your financials, I'll make sure I understand why the budget is what the budget is, blah, 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 and that takes some time. Something I didn't do, I'm sorry, let me back up for just a second. I am the full-time staff member, the only full-time employee dedicated to the foundation, but we have very, very great help in lots of areas. But one is with Karen in the back. You all probably saw Karen. Many of you that have been involved with the foundation have gotten her little love letters with checks attached. I know you love her. You love her more than me because she's always giving you money. But we're the 2 staff members that you are going to be dealing with. And so the process takes some time because it's just a matter of workload and making sure that we get things done the right way. There are 8 meetings, board meetings a year, and the Open Records Act applies to all of our meetings, so they are posted 72 hours in advance. You'll find them on our website. You'll find those agendas also posted on the city's website. And our fiscal year is October 1st through September 30th, which is the reason we wanted to get in front of the fiscal year, so any of you that are anxious to hit us, you'll know when to hit us. Okay, so our focus areas. Again, I mentioned on the flyer, you saw the 10 categories where we have contributed. And again, in an effort to make sure that our mission and our work is well understood, well articulated, the board has made a decision to talk about our work in 3 broad categories. The first category is addressing the needs of our people. And by people, we mean the family, we mean senior citizens, we mean children, we mean individuals. And it's the ways that we really address and strengthen neighborhoods. So this is where you'll find that programming, everything from the great work that's going on at Boys and Girls Clubs to the kinds of things that Shirley's doing in the neighborhood. Where's Shirley Patterson? There she is. Great stuff in neighborhoods. So that's that broad category. We're going to call that people and neighborhoods. The second category is nature and animals. Those are those things that you think of when you think of environmental and energy conservation. You think about animals, you think about the Animal Service Center, think about beautification, those kinds of things that are around nature and animals, the great work that's going on at River Legacy. Those are the kinds of things that would apply in this category. The last category is the one that I actually like to talk about when it talks about lifestyle. Some of us would rather read a book than go to a concert. Others would rather see visual arts than performing arts. Some people would rather go to a park than just about anything. These are all of those things that make the community a better place to live and a better place to grow a family, reasons that you stay in a community, reasons that you're attracted to a community. So that's that bigger category. Those of you like the Levitt and my friends at the theater and those folks, this is where you will find yourself. Cats, find yourself here in those kinds of programming. This is also where the Parks and Recreation Department funding will be housed. So eligibility, we've already talked about the fact that in order to be eligible for a grant, you must be a 501c3 or a city department or partnering with one of those two if you don't have your own 501c3. We actually will consider grants for both capital and programming. This is something else that's new for those of you that know us. There are no ceilings, there are no minimums on grant sizes. In the past, each of our categories had a maximum award. So in the past, for example, those of you that would have applied in the arts or would have applied in youth and families, you knew that you were not going to be, there was no way we would consider a grant larger than that. The board, again, in keeping with their mission to make sure that we're flexible, that we're having impact in the community, has removed those caps. That's not to say the projects don't need to be well articulated, well designed, and you need to make a case for them, but those caps are no longer part of our system. And as we've talked about with many of you in the community, we are not a foundation that intends to fund a project at 100%. So we expect you to be able to demonstrate some sort of match. A match financially or a match through sweat equity, volunteer efforts, maybe some other funding sources, whether it's private funding or government funding. But as we go through the process, I will be able to articulate to you what those are, what those requirements are, but I want you all to know that that is something the board is interested in understanding. So a lot of people say, well, how do I know what you all talk about and how you make your decisions? So what I've attempted to do here is really capture the approach to the decision making. So the number one is, does it fit within our giving priorities and our purpose? So it's very, very broad, and I understand that. We're here about making sure that Arlington is a better place to call home. It's intentionally broad, but you should understand what our priorities are and what our guidelines are. Is the project aligned with the city's priorities? Again, we are a foundation that is unique in that we have a direct link to the work of the city. And so therefore, the city's priorities, the council's priorities, the city manager's vision are going to be a part of what our foundation is going to consider when it starts making its awards. What problem is the applicant addressing? You all that have applied know very well that you could write usually a tome on what problems you're trying to address. You have great, great vision, you have great commitment to the city, but you've got to be able to articulate what it is you're addressing. Who and what will be impacted? Everything from the animal population to the cultural patron. What exactly do you expect to be the impact? You've got to be able to articulate that. What role can the foundation play? Well, every one of you in the room would say, well, if you just give me a check, I could blah, 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 blah. Well, it's not always that easy, and our board thinks about it in a very holistic way. So at the very beginning, you think, well, if you just get money, everything else can kind of fall in place. Our board's going to want to understand what's the bigger picture. And so, yes, it's very nice to get a check, but this shouldn't be the only role in making a project successful. And what other resources are needed? You all know, again, to tackle really, really big projects, and Jimmy alluded to this, it may require a lot of collaboration. It may require a number of dominoes to fall before a check actually gets cut. Those are the kinds of things the board will consider. Now, that doesn't necessarily give you a recipe. I understand that, and I still get calls from people that say, well, how do I write this? Well, you've got to just kind of keep these general principles in mind. There's some other things that I'd like you to consider, and I will tell you, and some of you in the room should be nodding because you hear this from me all the time. The other considerations the board will take into account are things like, is the program successfully offered elsewhere? There are a lot of really, really great programs out there that are frankly being replicated. This board is becoming more and more interested in making sure programs are deeply seated, not just repeated. Second thing is, could we have greater impact through collaborative efforts? Again, Jimmy's already mentioned that, so don't be surprised if you shoot an LOI, a letter of inquiry to me, and I turn right around and I say, have you thought about calling blah, blah, blah? Could we get a meeting? Could we get the three of us together? Because I'm anticipating what we're going to hear from the board of directors. How viable is the project or program? You all know this better than I can tell you. There are a million great ideas out there. But a great idea has to be able to be long-term, sustainable, and viable, and the board will actually want to know those sorts of things. It's my job to make sure I articulate that fact on your behalf, but you should consider that. Does the applicant have the scale and expertise to actually deliver the project? Not sure I need to say much more than that necessarily. Again, a good idea without a lot of depth, without a lot of ability, without resources and the ability is a good idea. May not be necessarily the best idea for that organization. Has the project or program garnered other support? That goes back to the match, and that's not just about necessarily other financial resources. Do you have a strong volunteer pool? Have you got other organizations collaborating with you? Have you got energy around it in lots of ways that maybe can be measured, maybe can't, but we should think about that. Might the foundation support make a difference? Again, our board at our 5-year point is deeply interested in making grants that we believe have deep impact. And impact can be measured lots of ways. It's not by how many zeros are on the check, but they want to make sure that it's a project and a program that our foundation makes possible where otherwise it might not have been. So what's ineligible? We don't do debt retirement, scholarships, endowments, sponsorships, fundraisers, religious, political, lobbying activities. We do not like to do ongoing operating support. That's the kind of thing that goes back to the viability of an organization. We cannot support the causes that are benefiting individuals specifically, and we don't do economic development activities with the foundation's resources. Now, this is the kind of thing, again, that I've told some of you in private meetings, and I want to tell you collectively as a group, it's my responsibility to be your advocate, and I take that very seriously, and I enjoy it, and I believe it's a gift that I can do that. But I'm going to have to ask some hard questions in order to present your case before the board. And the number one thing I would ask you to do is please do your homework. Understand our foundation. Understand how we work, understand what we've supported, understand who we are, and if you don't, call me. That's my job, to make sure you do. But you need to understand our guidelines and the best way that your work fits into the goals of this foundation and its very unique structure. Please plan accordingly. There's that old adage about, that whole thing about, your emergency doesn't mean a catastrophe on my part, or your catastrophe doesn't mean an emergency on my part, whatever it is. I did mention that the process may take 4 or 5 months. So please plan accordingly, and please don't assume that the funding will come in a month like manna from heaven, because it may not. You all are doing great work, and I know you've got a lot of, very divine influence over you, but I can't promise you something less than 4 or 5 months. So please plan accordingly. Also plan that anything that this foundation would support, we expect to be accomplished and well underway within 12 months of the grant award. So many of you will come to us and say, well, we want a capital gift, and we're going to raise $1.5 million, and we need you to be the first 50 in. Probably not the best plan, not for this foundation. You need to present your case. I know you all do that every day. Believe me, I have a great deal of respect for what you do, but you have to be able to articulate your case to me and in a written format so that the board understands why you're doing what you're doing and what you hope to accomplish. Organize your documents. This is a lot easier for some than others, because I know many of you are like me. You wear a million hats, you're doing a million things. But we're going to have your tax documents, we have to have your financials. I got to understand the budget, not only your organizational budget, but the project budget. I'm going to ask you for a W-9. We're going to have, all of these documents rounded up, tidied up, and ready to go at the time the board makes a decision. So get yourself organized. Many of you already are. If you need help with that, you don't understand what it is, again, that's what we're here to do. And then ultimately be ready to measure your impact. Be ready to tell us what was accomplished with the grant. And that's one of those things that we tie up at the end of the granting process. So now in summary, let me tell you real quickly some of the modifications. For those of you that have been with us since 2007, those of us that you that have applied, these are the things I want you to know that are variations from the program before. These are the kinds of things the board has put in place to hopefully deepen the impact and make this organization more accessible to you. So we've removed the award caps and eliminated the 2-year sitting out period. I forgot to mention that earlier. Some of you know that when the foundation was created, the organizers really weren't sure what to expect. So they had a policy where if an organization were to be awarded a grant in 2 years consecutively, then they would sit out for 2 years in order to make it fair and basically spread the wealth, if you will. But what we found in 5 years is that the foundation board is very, very good at being able to address the priorities of the community and understand kind of in the broader context what's needed. So that kind of operational policy is not necessary moving forward. We will consider multi-year grants under special circumstances. That was something that I used to get asked a lot in the community. That is not going to be the day-to-day operations, but in very unique circumstances, the board wants that flexibility to do that if they believe it's important to a project's success. We will accept the letters of inquiry all year long. So that first step, any point in the year you can apply, and there are no more fall and spring funding cycles. And so there are no more, you have to apply in the fall to get a grant for youth and families or for an arts and culture project. We want to be timed to the kind of work that's going on, because some of you know you can't predict in September what you know the programming will be in March. So we want to be flexible and open to what you're addressing in the community, boots on the ground. The grant awards are now going to be in 3 categories, 3 broad categories, versus the previous 10 categories. If you're not clear where to apply, you really can't go wrong. It's up to me to decide if I have to recategorize you, but it's very simple, 1 out of 3. So we'll figure it out. And the board, as Jimmy and Lana have said, we're really looking for the deep, impactful grants, the kind of thing that progresses your programming and moves down the road to making Arlington a thriving community. Okay, so what I'd like to do now is I'd like to take you through our new website. I can stand up here all day long and talk to you, and you can have a question today, and you'll get home tonight, or you'll get to the office tomorrow, and you say, I don't know how to get there. Our website was redesigned, and Lana, thank you for the compliment, and others of you that have been on our website, I'd love to hear your feedback. It's designed with you in mind. So what I'd like to do is take you through, is it going to be live now for me? It's on, okay, thank you. First of all, it's a new look, and the look is really designed to celebrate you. The foundation and our job is to come alongside those of you in the community that are doing the great work. So what we wanted to do was design a website that tells your story, talks about the grants that we might have awarded but that you executed. So what we've done here is, just as an example, this is River Legacy. It's off the canoe launch. This is at the Levitt the children's programming. This is the Child Development Center, right, Karen? Yes, I think it is. Child Resource Center, I think. Yes. This is Boys and Girls Club. This is Randall Mill Park West. This is learning to lose the training wheel program for Down syndrome kids learning to ride bicycles. Kith and Kin. EcoFest at the Levitt. These are the stories of what is going on in the community and your good work, and we're going to try our best to highlight all of your good work at one time or another. So when we call you and ask you to tell your story, please raise your hand and say, happy to do so. Give us pictures, give us your story. So that's number one. Number two, we've got our vision, mission, our board, our history. A lot of times people will say to me, well, how did this foundation even start? They think they know, they're not clear. This takes you through the entire history of the program from 2006, when it was nothing but a dream, all the way down to the grant agreement and the first grant awards. By the way, if you go to our banner, it takes you back to home. So you go through here, giving categories. So if you don't really know whether or not your program, your project fits, right here, we've tried to articulate exactly what we're trying to do and what our goals are. Again, deliberately designed to be broad so that there's a ability for you to fit in there. So here's the nature and animals category. Here's lifestyle, libraries, and culture. And here's River Legacy. And you'll see here on every one of the pages, we've attempted to tell our story so that you remember who we are and what we do, including, instead of the bar chart you all see on the handout, this is a pie chart to show you our history and our impact. But this is what you guys care about the most. Let's go back to home. Okay, middle of the page, eligibility. So it talks about what I've already said about being a nonprofit, city departments. Here's how to apply. Step 1, all the way through the end, and what we expect in terms of your reporting. The online application is embedded right here. This is an eye chart right now. I apologize for that, but when you get to your desk, hopefully it's clear and direct. This will take you to the letter of inquiry, which takes a minute to load. The design with the letter of inquiry is to not ask you more than I absolutely need. Again, it's out of respect for what you do. I don't expect any of you to employ a grant writer to apply to our organization. You ought to be able to do it because you know your work. And if I think you need a grant writer, I'll let you know. But right now, I don't see anybody in this room who needs a grant writer. You're all articulate, you understand your work, you understand the needs of this community. So we've designed it to be straightforward. For those of you that have applied in the past, it's the exact same form. It comes directly to my desk and it goes into a database. So I will know when you have applied, and you should receive a confirmation the moment you hit send. Again, plan on 4 to 5 months in total, but you will get confirmation as soon as you hit submit. The other things that we get asked, I know our board members get asked a lot, is what have you done in the past? Who have you awarded to? Some of you in the room can talk about it because you are our past grantees. This is a list. Every single grant that's ever been awarded is on this website with a description. So here's CATS, the project, the amount. Friends of the Levitt, all the way down the line. Trying to tell your story and trying to talk about what it is we were hoping to accomplish with our grant. So all 252 grants are listed on this page if anybody's interested. Governance and finance. This goes back to our commitment to you all as citizens, and commitment to the community, and commitment to the city. All of our financial statements are listed. Anybody who wants to know more can call me, but here are the financial statements. Here's the investment reports, which we'll have our first investment report in October of this year. our tax return, and our annual reports. The other question we get a lot is governance. How do you operate? Why do you do what you do, when you do it, how you do it? I haven't always been a government employee. I'm learning it, and I have a great deal of respect for what people who've made their careers in public administration do, a great deal of respect, including understanding how important this is. So if you want to know our bylaws, our charter, or our finances, or how decisions are made, or what the board has done, you will find it under governing documents, including our requirements as under open records, that all of our meetings should be posted, all of that detail. So my hope is that here at the website, I've got myself some arms and legs and some additional staff kind of components, and that everything you need is there. But in the event it's not, my email, my contact are all listed here as well, and you can just shoot me an email. So there's the board activities, here's the stories we talked about, here's a thumbnail of the foundation, and we hope this thing will be alive and well with pictures of all your organizations moving forward. So that is it in a nutshell. Bill, I guess we've got one final slide, and that is really now just to ask for questions. I'm not sure if I've answered everything or I've stirred up more questions than you had, but I'm more than happy to actually take some questions. I know Lana and Jimmy are happy to take them as well. So if any of you have comments or questions, I'm happy to take them. I'd like to repeat your questions. We are filming this for folks who couldn't be here, and it'll be available on YouTube. Yippee. People can pull it up if they need more information. Shirley?
I just wondered, is this in place now?
Yes, ma'am. She asked if all of this is in place now. Our fiscal year 13 begins October 1st. So as of October 1st, all of this is in place, which is why we wanted to get here. Some of you, again, that are faithful grant applicants know that September 26th was the deadline. I know Joan's already called me. How do I get in? June 26th was the deadline for applications. I wanted to get in front of that, so there are no more of those deadlines. Just October 1st will when all of this will roll out. Yes.
I'm kind of representing some of the schools that are in MISD but in the city of Arlington. As long as they're physically in the city of Arlington, regardless if they have some students who may live in Mansfield or some of the elementary schools may have a little reach, their PTSAs or the PTAs would be eligible?
Yes, the question is she's representing, right, Mansfield School District. And as you all know, there's a significant section of the city where our children go to the Mansfield schools but live in the city of Arlington. They must be serving predominantly must be serving Arlington kids. And Coble Middle School is a good example of a parent-teacher association that applied for a grant, got one to help with an outdoor classroom. So it must be serving city of Arlington kids. Others? Yes, ma'am.
Just to clarify, you said it would only be one of the giving categories that we would apply under, and then that there's right now no distribution of funds according to the three categories strictly, because there's not any of the ceilings, or is there any sense of kind of, I guess, priorities amongst the giving categories?
The question was about the priorities under the giving category as it relates to the dollar available under each category. That's a good question. That is really driven by the structure of the foundation and the way that the foundation was created according to the city council, the agreement between the city and the foundation. And so there are very specific levels of money available depending on what the category is. For example, there's only going to be X amount of money available in animal services. Once that money is actually distributed, it's not like I can take it from other categories. Is that answering your question? Yes. Yes. And so, but that's my job, to help the board understand where the available funding is. And those will be factored into the decisions. So, for example, if the library, in the whole library category, if there's $78,000 available in fiscal year 13, once that $78,000 has been distributed by the board, there aren't other monies available. So I'll have to manage that, but those are details that will happen at the board level. Yes, ma'am.
What is your process now for reporting out a year after you receive your funds? How are you measuring success?
Right. So the question was what's the process for reporting out at the end of a grant period? We have actually a grant report that is required that will have details about the grant that was awarded, the programming, and then you will actually articulate what those goals are, what you accomplished as part of that grant. In some cases, depending on the size of the grant, you will actually have to meet certain milestones to get payments. So that's part of the monitoring, that's part of the reporting, is before you would get an entire grant, we may put certain accomplishments in place that the organization must meet before they get the second installment or maybe even a third.
Is that listed on the website?
No, that would be something that once the contract is awarded, we would have communication about that and deliver those expectations at the point that the contract is actually signed and delivered. That's a part of your grant contract. There's an attachment that talks about what you will accomplish. Okay.
Question on the multi-year. Is it structured or would it be a consideration for the board, let's say it's a large project, and I looked at the project and they said, okay, we're not funded for 3 years, just a construction phase, or is it something I apply for to say, here's my grant and I want to repeat it for 3 consecutive years? Is it structured that way, or?
Yeah, Mary's asking about multi-year grants and talking about how they're structured in terms of the requirements, and some of that will be nuance. Some of that will be the board understanding the project, understanding the scale and scope. A lot of it will have to do with available funding. A lot of it will have to do on how much the board actually has to award in a given time and what other commitments they've made or what other projects they want to undertake. So again, the board's trying to be flexible, but it's hard. This is going to be more like an art than a science as we approach this. But it is, again, about making sure that we can be as supportive as possible so they would consider it. That's not to say that any time you apply for a multi-year that they would actually agree to that, because some of it has to do on what they expect to be doing over the next several years.
Would I put it into the LOI?
Yeah, Mary's asking, would she put it into the LOI? That will be the kind of thing that I think you would be upfront about, and then that's the kind of thing, once I got the LOI, I would call you and I'd say, let's understand what this is, again, so that the board could be fully prepared for what the question is. But don't count on it. Again, it's that whole plan accordingly, but yes. Yes, ma'am.
Two questions that was raised earlier about the giving categories. You mentioned that there's a certain amount per category. Are you able to share how much is already set up for next year's category and when are you publishing that? Or
That is the question was on each of those categories, those three, those people in neighborhoods and animals and nature and then the lifestyle. In some cases, I can. So let's say in that lifestyle category, if a library, public or a private library or a school library comes to us and says how much is available in that category, I can absolutely say how much is available. If the cultural community comes to us and says how much is available for arts and culture funding, that's another line that I can. When it comes to neighborhoods, it's a rounder number because, and I'm getting into more detail than you care about, but I have the ability to address, is this a safe neighborhood project? Is this really addressing youth and family? Is this about strong neighborhoods? Is this, and I can find a way to start looking at projects, and the board will want to do that. So I hate to answer your question with a yes, no, but it depends. It really kind of depends. Some categories, absolutely. We know exactly how much is available in historic preservation.
as far as the three general ones?
Yes.
Like 500,000 per.
No, it's not 1.5 divided by 3. It's not that. And those are details, again, that are backroom details, but I can make available to anyone who asks me who's trying to apply. Anything else? Yes, Kimberly.
With the state
She's asking how, with a staggered process and an ongoing open process, how they will be able to address that. In some ways, it's not different than what they've already been doing, because they've been actually addressing applicants in a twice-a-year process. At this point, we expect to be addressing applications on a quarterly basis. And so the quarterly basis will be not only just the LOIs that come in, but also the applications. So they may be inviting some and making award decisions on another, but it'll actually be more robust than the twice a year in the past. And what we were finding was a lot of organizations were throwing an application in September, because got to get in there, but it might not have been a real project, and they might have still been trying to, and so in some ways, I suspect that this will be a more real kind of process than force-fitting into 2 cycles. So, but it's like anything else, the board will make decisions based on the information they have in front of them and what they know about what's going on in the community and whether these fit within the priorities of the foundation. Is anything else? Yes, sir.
Yeah, could one organization apply separately for 2 different projects?
His question is, can one organization apply for 2 separate projects? Yes. And there's probably a lot of you in the room that are going, yes, you can. Yes, you may. Because a lot of organizations are doing, again, broad programming. And so some of it may be about addressing something that's going on specifically in a neighborhood. And they also may be doing something that's specifically about senior citizens, has nothing to do with that neighborhood. So the answer is yes, you may. And there's nothing to say that you can't apply, more than twice or in more than one category and all of that. Again, just please do your homework and make sure it's a well-founded application. Okay, well, I'm looking at the clock. It's about 5 till 2. Thank you so much. I hope this was helpful. If you have questions when you leave, there are my business cards and the flyers. Please visit our website. And thank you all for your ongoing support of the community.